Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Mark, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and today we're going to be talking about mistakes that backpackers make on the trail. So we're going to walk through 5 different mistakes that I've either done or seen people make out on the trail and been a witness to. Now, we make mistakes pretty much every trip you go on. You will make a mistake, some sort of mistake along the way. But there are certain ones that I've seen that kind of have a bigger impact to how much you actually enjoy the trip. Now, some of the mistakes you make aren't going to be a big deal. You know, a mistake while you're crossing a stream and you step in the water. During the summer, you've got a wet leg, big deal, not a big issue. But other mistakes, you know, overestimating something, your skills, placing a hand in the wrong spot while climbing up a rock could have, especially if you're out solo, a lot bigger of an impact. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through 5 mistakes that I've seen backpackers make and talk through some stories on them. And finally, I will give you what to do to avoid those mistakes, or at least minimize your chance of making those mistakes. So let's go. Okay, so the first mistake that I see people make out on the trail, and it a lot of times is the newer backpackers that are making this mistake, although some seasoned backpackers do it as well, and that is carrying too much weight. Now, it's really tempting to go out and buy the biggest pack you can possibly get and fill it with all kinds of comforts and all kinds of things to make your trip more enjoyable, and have things to do when you get to camp, and have, you know, a chair and all kinds of good stuff. But if you are carrying too much weight, it does increase your chance of injury. It makes the trip just not as much fun, especially if you are hiking with people who are not carrying nearly as much weight. So a great story, a great example of this, and I'll use my friend Darren, a really good friend Darren, to highlight this, is so Beekeeper, Sherpa Man, myself, and Darren, who got a couple of different trail names after this, show up at a motel that we were staying at the night before hitting the Smokies, and we were doing the Smoky section of the AT, and we were doing multiple days. And the problem with the Smokies is you have to actually reserve, especially if you're not a thru hiker, you have to reserve which shelters you're staying at, and they don't allow you to just stay wherever. So we had our itinerary set up, and we got there, and Jeremy, Sherpa Man, came over and said, "Hey, have you seen Darren's backpack?" It's like, no. So we went over and checked it out, and while each of us was carrying somewhere between probably 18 and 25 pounds, I would wager to guess his was probably in the 40 to 60 pound range. And he had things in there that weren't really necessary. Things like a full can of bug spray, cans of soup, like a 2.5 pound bag of trail mix, like all kinds of stuff. Like he had gone to Costco and bought a bunch of stuff and just kind of thrown it in this bag. And he had an extremely big backpack, so he had the ability to really just stuff it full of stuff. And that's what he did. And even though we didn't have to carry shelters with us because we were staying at shelters, his pack was busting at the seams. Just way too much weight. So how do you avoid it? Well, you can avoid it by doing shakedown hikes. Pack your pack with whatever your trip is coming up, what you would be carrying, and go out and do 5-6 mile day hikes just to see how does it feel carrying that weight. And if you are absolutely miserable carrying it, go back home and figure out, do you have what you really need, or are you carrying too much weight? Now, mistake number 2 that I see out there quite a bit is using untested gear. You know, it can be really exciting to get a new piece of gear in, and say the gear comes in, like right now. Actually, great example. Right now, I am sitting here waiting for FedEx to come, or maybe it's UPS, with a piece of gear that I'm going to be taking out on the trail. Fortunately, it's not a vital piece of gear. It is something that I'm adding to my video collection, my filming gear list, not an actual piece, not like one of my big 3. Big 3 footwear, things like that, you definitely don't want to be taking untested gear out into the woods. And for several reasons. Number one, do you know how to actually use it? Number two, did it come with everything that it actually needs? So you could order a tent from Z-Packs. Get it thinking that it's everything that you need, not realizing. You've seen all these people talking about the Z-Packs duplex, and you're new to hiking. You know that that's what a lot of thru hikers are using, and you're like, I've got to have that. You order it, you get it, you throw it in your pack, you go out, you get to your first camp and you go to set it up and you realize that you needed trekking poles to actually set it up, and you don't use trekking poles. You didn't understand why you would need trekking poles, and so there are no poles to set this tent up with. Or you get a tent that required seam sealing and it's going to rain this weekend, and because you just got it, you threw it in your pack and you went out there, you haven't seam sealed it, and now you've got this tent that's going to leak all over you. You know, people getting hammocks and not realizing that they aren't complete hammocks. You can buy hammocks that don't have continuous loops in the ends to actually connect to your suspension. People don't realize that they don't come with suspension. And so you could get out there and get yourself in a situation where you don't have what you need to do it. Or you may get a piece of gear that either doesn't fit correctly, doesn't fit properly, or that you just don't like. And so doing something like backyard testing, going out to a local park, taking the time to set your gear up and use it. Lay in your hammock, set up your tent, blow up your sleeping pad, lay on it, toss and turn like you would during the night. Doing those things before you go out gives you a sense of confidence in the gear that you've got, and it makes it a lot easier when you get out there knowing that you've got what you need and that it's going to work. Mistake number 3 that I see a lot of people make, and this one's actually bad enough that it can actually force people to stop hiking. It can lead to some serious injuries, and it is doing too much too soon. So just because your favorite YouTuber is a thru hiker that pushes out 30+ mile days doesn't mean that you can or that you should. Maybe you physically can. Maybe you are in great shape and you can go out there and you can knock out 30 miles yourself. But should you? Probably not. So even those who have logged a lot of miles and have knocked out killer days. You know, I've knocked out close to 30 mile days. I probably actually have knocked out some 30 mile days. I can't do that right now. I have not been putting enough trail miles in. I haven't been doing enough prep work to try and hit those kind of miles. Even a 20 mile day right now is work. It's tough, especially with the shorter days. So going out there and doing too much too soon is a recipe just to not have fun. Even if you can do it or you've seen people do it, that's not really what you have to be doing. Pick something that fits where you're at right now. If you've never been backpacking, if you've only gone hiking, if you're just getting out there and getting started, pick an attainable goal. Pick something that's short. Pick a place that has some good scenery and make it a short hike just to test your gear. Get out there, make sure that you enjoy what you're doing, and set realistic goals and build, over weeks. Build until you're at where you want to be. Don't jump right in. It's only going to lead to a lot of discomfort and you just not having fun, and maybe even walking completely away from it and saying, this just isn't for me. Take your time. Slowly build into it. All right, the next mistake is a big one that I kind of alluded to in the intro, and that is either underestimating the trail or overestimating your skill. Both of those kind of go hand in hand and can really result in a bad situation. So a lot of people they pull up maps, they start looking at things, they go watch some YouTube videos, and they say, okay, that looks like a cool trail, I'm gonna go do it, I'm gonna hike to this spot. Or maybe you have to hike to certain spots to set up camp, depending on where you are. So you select a route that's, I can do 15 miles pretty easy, so I'm gonna do 15 miles this day. And what you didn't take into account is that there are huge mountains in your way, a lot of scrambling, some really difficult terrain, some really difficult creek crossings, river crossings, things like that. And you've got to weigh all of those things. You've got to know what you're getting into to know, are you really ready for it? So the very first YouTube video that I posted on this channel was a trip in the Adirondacks. And my buddy Sherpa Man, Jeremy, he's grown up there. I grew up there, but I've been away from that area for a long time. But that's his backyard, that's his playground. That's where he goes and hangs out and has a lot of fun. And so to him, the rugged backcountry of the High Peaks region of the Adirondacks is nothing. There are really steep climbs, some boulders you have to go over. And when Beekeeper Mike and I went out and joined him for that hike, we got into some situations that neither of us were really extremely comfortable with. And had he not been there to kind of talk us through some of them, we probably at some point would have turned around, because it was borderline dangerous. And had one of us been out there solo and tried to, let our ego take over and say, hey, I want to kill this loop, I want to really get done with this, could have put yourself in a bad position. So you've got to make sure that you know your limitations, know what your skill sets are, and research your trail. Research where you're going, what type of terrain you're going to get into, and kind of like some of the other, with like the gear, getting out and doing shakedown hikes. Don't only go to places where it's easy to do a shakedown hike and get used to your gear. Go and actually do shakedown hikes of terrain. Pick a really rough, rugged, short trail and go out and see, are you comfortable on that terrain? Are you comfortable having to climb over things? Are you comfortable having to squeeze between things? You may find that you like hiking through meadows rather than over mountains, and so you may want to adjust your trips to account for that. All right, the last mistake that I see people make on the trail is one that actually can go both ways, but I'm going to talk about the one side of it, and that's carrying too little food. Certainly there are a lot of people out there that carry way too much food, and I've been definitely guilty of that a time or two. But on the opposite side, I think on the worst side is carrying too little food. And so people underestimate the amount of calories that they're actually going to burn and how hungry they can get out hiking, especially when it's colder out. You burn through a lot of calories, and it is a lot of work carrying a pack over mountains, through rivers, wherever it is that you're out exploring. It's awesome to get out there and have the adventure, but you want to make sure that you're fueling your body while you're doing it. And so make sure that you're accounting for the fact that you're going to be eating more, that you're going to be stopping for snacks, that you want to have lunch, that you probably, when you get to camp, are going to be hungry and you're going to want to eat something. Then later in the day, you're probably going to want a second dinner. That's what, Raymond and I a lot of times talk about, first dinner and second dinner. And that's a real thing. That is actually something that we do when we're out on the trail, especially when we're doing longer miles, is that in order to get the calories that we truly need to keep going, particularly when you're doing multi-day trips, that lack of caloric intake over time really compounds itself, and you get to the point where you really are struggling day to day to keep moving if you aren't intaking the right amount of calories. Now, this is one that, for whatever reason, well, I know exactly why. Ultralight hikers, ultralight backpackers are extremely susceptible to it because they don't want to carry too much weight. They're trying to keep their pack weight super low and crush a ton of miles, and I get it. But that's not where you want to sacrifice. That's not where you want to cut weight, is not in the food. Make sure that you're carrying enough. Being hungry on the trail sucks. I'm always hungry. So I make sure that I carry enough food. I have definitely had those trips where I didn't carry enough food and I regretted it and it sucked. And since doing that one or two times, I make sure that I've got enough food and I'm happy. Food does equal happiness on the trail. All right, guys, those are 5 of the mistakes that I have seen or have personally done while out backpacking, and some of the ones that I see that actually cause a bit of a concern for people while they're out there. So what mistakes have you made? What mistakes have you seen other people make? This could get interesting. I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing what you guys post down there in the comments. So let me know, bring them on, and let's discuss the mistakes that people, or you, maybe someone you know, right? Or a friend, what they've made. All right, if you like this video, I've got a lot of videos out there about backpacking, hiking, camping, hammocking. If this is something that you enjoy, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, give it a like, consider subscribing to the channel. If you would, that would really help us out quite a bit. Get us in that algorithm a little bit more, get us viewed a little bit more, and just kind of get the content out there. And if you like it enough, go ahead and share it with your friends. That would really be great. Go ahead and check out the Patreon page if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to support the channel, would greatly appreciate that as well. I appreciate you checking this out, coming along, and I will see you guys down the trail.